What's up, everyone, and welcome to Racially Speaking, a podcast dedicated to having real and honest conversations about race as it's viewed through the lenses of faith, family, and vocation. I'm David, and you're listening to episode 2. If you listened to episode 1, you're already familiar with my guest. My good friend, Zach Bush, came back for another episode, and I'm excited for you to hear from him again. In this conversation, we focused on all things representation. We discussed the recent inauguration of Vice President Kamala Harris and what it means both for our country and to us personally. And we also share some of our thoughts on representation of people of color in the entertainment industries, including children's toys and movies. Last, we leave you with some helpful resources to help further inform you on how to continue to learn and grow. All right, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Zach Bush. What's going on, man? Thanks for coming back for episode 2 so quickly. You're already helping me build a rapport with our listeners because you've helped me follow through on, I think, the one promise from last episode, and that was that you would come back. So you're already here. So thanks for coming back, man.
Well, I appreciate it. It was cool to hear some of the responses from people that listened. So I was like, God, this is cool. People are actually listening to us.
Yeah, I mean, you're really everyone's favorite guest so far, you know?
All right. Yeah, I'll take it for now.
Yeah, big shoes to fill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, how you been? You said you've been doing some reno at the new place in Memphis?
Yep. We have been kind of redoing our whole entire house. And we just put up a ton of drywall today, ripped off old wood paneling and building up office and putting in pocket doors and all that stuff. So yeah, a lot of work.
Nice. Yeah, I know what a pocket door is. I'll pretend I know what you're talking about. Man. Anyway, man. Well, I guess we can just call this, let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. And I mean, by that, I mean, I think the content we're going to do, or not I think, but the content we're going to get into today is really what we had planned for the first episode. If you haven't listened to episode 1, I think we appropriately took a detour from what we had planned to when we sat down to record to talk about what happened on January 6th at the Capitol. Because the nature of this podcast, we want it to be real. And yeah, we needed to kind of start there for better or worse. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about what we're talking about today, and that's representation and, man, why it's important. And ironically, again, we didn't plan this at all, but another current event is something I think we need to use to launch us into this. The current event was, of course, the inauguration. Was it earlier this week? Yeah, earlier this week. I guess last week technically, because
yeah.
But yeah, man. Okay, so in case you've been living under a rock, the inauguration of President Biden, Vice President Harris was on Wednesday, just a few days ago now, 5 days ago, I guess. Man, representation. We got to start there. Let's talk about Kamala. Let's just do it, man. Like, I know you followed it. We were texting. We followed it all day. Did you watch the whole concert that night?
I watched bits and pieces, but I watched the inauguration for sure.
Yeah.
It was, historic.
It was incredible. Just give me some raw thoughts on seeing Kamala Harris be sworn in as the first female. I don't forget, but I never know what order to say it. So first female vice president, African American, Asian American descent. What were some of your feels watching that?
Oh man, it was so cool. I was just happy for her, for minorities all over, for women and women of color. It was just really neat to see how things can change as far as she's the vice president of the United States, which is so cool to see. Yeah, my kids were watching and we talked about it, and Ash and I have been teaching our kids to about different cultures, how to and people of color and how to celebrate them and like why it's important to do that. And it was just neat for them to see it and to see her up there and be like, oh, that's great. She's the vice president now. And them getting excited about it too. And just all sharing in that moment of seeing that happen. I'm just really, really excited and encouraged. And not only her, but just seeing like the people that he's picking in his cabinet is pretty diverse.
The most diverse cabinet ever. Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, this is great. And this is the kind of like showing what truly representing like America and seeing how many different cultures and people there are within this country, and not just predominantly like one race. So that's it's really neat.
Yeah, I mean, I can't grow tired of seeing all the posts about people of color and the kids, and talking about what it means to children and the next generation. Because I think that maybe theoretically, a lot of people maybe understood that concept of, oh yeah, we need people that look different. We need more diversity because that's gonna teach kids more about diversity. But I think until you see something like that, and then something that was, I mean, we saw this going around, I think, during the election, that was just incredibly powerful, is just seeing, I think there was a time lapse, or like a reel of all the former vice presidents in our history. And then, it ended, of course, with Kamala Harris, and just even, pictures are worth 1,000 words. I mean, seeing that just in front of you was like, man. And I mean that, and then just knowing that she's the highest elected female official to hold office. I'm butchering that, but yeah, representation allied with power is something that I feel like we don't talk a lot about. And I think the opposite of representation being allied with power is tokenism, right? Mm-hmm. So we easily see tokenism a lot, and this, just incredible on a lot of levels. Just opens up so many possibilities. Like, I mean, literally for women and for people of color, finally people can see, our leaders and think, oh, I could do that. Whether or not someone didn't think they could do something, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, I remember remember this kind of just now, but I remember just being, limited mentally, I guess, of what possibilities I had. Like, I'm not saying I ever wanted to really be like, an actor in a play, like, never really. But in my mind, I knew I couldn't do certain things because it's like, well, I've never seen an Asian man play that kind of role or do these kind of things. And this is just a huge example of flipping the script. And it's just incredibly powerful. And then hearing, I think, Kamala Harris talk about herself as a little girl, and then seeing her then be sworn in was just like, oh my gosh, like she's living it out. And then children are seeing her live it out, and just, it's huge.
Yeah. And then like the village in India that her relatives are from, and like seeing them celebrate her and seeing like, wow, look what you can become. And like how far they've come. And it was just really cool to see that and be like, yeah, the possibilities are endless. It's not just, oh, you have to be a certain person, like you have to be a white man or a man in general to be in these positions of power. It's like, hey, it's breaking the mold. It's showing that women are awesome, and we need to celebrate that, and women of color, and she's not just one race. So it's even cooler to see that. Yeah. So yeah.
Did you cry?
I don't know if I didn't cry, but I like teared up with excitement and joy.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. I didn't cry this time. I kind of expected that maybe I would. Caitlin cried a lot off and on during the day. Watching that, but for people that know her, that's, pretty normal. Hope she doesn't get mad at me for sharing that. I did, get choked up when I see images of her and Michelle Obama interacting. I mean, man, they look so regal up there, like man, seeing them interact and understanding the path that the Obamas paid for her is just, that's really moving, I think, to see that, especially at the inauguration. So I got choked up seeing them interact for sure. All right. Anyway, we could, keep talking about this for hours, but let's make ourselves move on a little bit. So along the lines with representation, which is really the main thing we wanted to talk about, how's representation even just personal to you? Whether that's can you talk about like your field, like the art world, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like there's a long way to go as far as like getting representation. Cause there are a few films here and there, that have started to pop up. Like, Black Panther was awesome. It was like a huge, awesome thing to watch and experience and go and watch with my kids and stuff like that, and seeing the main actors be African American. But like things that I feel like there's a lot of things that are still celebrated that are hurtful and racist when it comes to film. Let's just say that with like, for example, like Peter Pan, it's like a Disney classic. It's still really cool, but like in there, when how they portray Native Americans and they make them sing and dance about what makes the red man red, and they paint them this bright red, that's like super insensitive and racist to even just do that and stereotype them that way. Or even like in Dumbo, they have the crows that his name is Jim and he's a Jim Crow. Yeah, just things like that where,
man, I didn't even remember that one.
Yeah, I haven't had my kids watch these, but just me growing up as a kid and experiencing that and not knowing what it was, but just being like, oh, okay, like that's how we're supposed to, I guess that's their culture, or that's just a character on a show. And I didn't think anything of it, but then it's like, man, these are kids watching these things. And like, and when you think about like the subliminal messages that kind of just put in our mind, and or even just in the art world, like what represents beauty when it comes to people. Yeah, it's just really, really frustrating to see that there's still things like this, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's the norm. And it's kind of surprising when things like films like Black Panther come along, and it's like, oh man, like that's really cool, and that shouldn't be once in a lifetime thing. I want it to be like constantly like, oh yeah, there's another cool film, another cool piece of art that has minorities in it, and they're celebrated, and they're not just like the stereotype or the punchline of the film or show.
Yeah, like it's good to celebrate these things. Like we need to celebrate them, but we'd also like there to not be a need to celebrate so much. Like, you know, that they're not so many exceptions to the norm.
It's like, oh, we're celebrating because it's so rare kind of thing. It's like we're celebrating it because of who they are and what they're talking about. Kind of like with Kamala, where it's like, this is amazing, but I want it to become more of the norm of like, yes, there's another person. And
and that's something I feel like she's focused on a ton, when at least the interviews that I've seen of her saying it's really not about her. It's about her maybe on inauguration day and the election and for their term, but it's about the future. She's very future focused, and I feel like is longing for the day where people aren't focused on her because they're too focused on how many more have come after her. I think that's a really important thing that stuck out to me about what true representation is, because I think I mentioned this earlier, but I think a lot of people confuse representation with tokenism, or just a, kind of pun intended, but face value of, statistics of like, well, statistically, based on where we live, or statistically on these numbers, or compared to when things were really bad, we're really diverse and we're doing great. So we've done our job. But no, it's so much more than that. And I feel like representation allied with power is something that's really important to understand. If you're an organization and you're working towards a more diverse place of work or place of entertainment, something like that, it's got to start and end with leadership, right? They have to have a voice that is treated as equal and a voice that has some pull, power. It can't be just a person of color you stick up front, stick on the stage, which, has obvious historic connotations, but has no say in what's going on. Because then the ones in power are always going to, for lack of a better word, win and have the final say. And so I think that's where a lot of the focus needs to end up. And I think a lot of times it doesn't. So, I mean, for you kind of went like the movie and mainstream route. Do you think is your field, like as a graphic designer, as a 3D artist, I mean, literally, like, is your field underrepresented as far as people of color go, would you say?
Yeah, I think there is still a lot of work that needs to be done as far as representation in it. I mean, they're definitely trying to change that, and so they can reach a broader audience, because a lot of it comes down to like sales and stuff. But like, for instance, in the graphic design field, I have some friends that are they create like book covers and stuff like that. Even in the Christian realm of like creating books and magazine covers and stuff, and they butt heads a lot of the times when they put a person of color on the cover, and they are either told straight up, like, change that because it's not going to sell. Like, we need to put a white person on the cover because that's our audience and that's how we make our money and stuff like that. So it's very frustrating that it's like, well, do you see a problem? You're telling me to change things to a white person when I'm trying to put on a cover or put on a graphic of a person that looks like me, and you're getting pushback from that. And it's like, well, should they be that color, or maybe we should just try to keep it all white? And it's like, kind of like when you put a black Jesus on something, or Jesus that's just not blue-eyed, brown hair, straight hair, on anything. It's kind of like people are like, oh, that's not Jesus. And it's so, yeah, I just think there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be worked on. And like you were saying, position of power, because a lot of these in the art field, when you come down to it, you look at the directors, you look at creative directors and all that stuff. A lot of them are predominantly white, and they have the final say with this stuff. And you can get pushback, but ultimately they're going to have the final say.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example of, you could be working, like, you literally could be working for, a place that all of the artists are people of color, but if no one has, final say, like your friend with the book cover, it's not true representation, because no one, your real opinions or big decisions that are the powerful decisions for change or for, properly representing your art are actually being decided by you. So yeah, I mean, that's a great example.
For example, Black Panther, it was directed by a black man. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was a black director. Even, let's say, Wonder Woman, it was directed by a woman. And so...
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And
that's awesome.
So yeah, it's just, there are like little, like, okay, there is progress happening. And look how well these films have done. And I don't think it would have been as successful if you would have had just kind of like a white person in that role, or a white man in the role of directing those films. It would have turned out the same.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, representation and having positions of power where you can have the final say of stuff is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that reminds me, speaking of, I guess, mainstream stuff, for me, have you seen Crazy Rich Asians?
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Great film.
Amazing film. So, I mean, I went to see it. I heard it was really good. I wanted to see it because I heard it was an amazing film, and also, was amazing as far as being representative of Asians, Asian Americans and Asians. So I went to see it. and I mean, it's a comedy, so I went to, kind of enjoy it. I didn't expect it to be, super moving necessarily. I just more thought it'd be entertaining, and I wanted to support it. But I remember watching one of the opening scenes. I mean, I think it's like in the first 10 minutes. I think most of it takes place in Shanghai, and the main characters fly over there, and I think it's before a wedding. They're meeting family and friends and stuff. And they're just out on the town, driving around, I think, in a convertible, eating food. I mean, cinematography. Yeah, cinematography is beautiful, showing the city and just everyone just hanging out and having a good time. And I don't know what it was, but I remember just like tearing up and being like, why am I emotional? And I mean, truly, it was because I was taking in the film, and everyone was Asian. No one was a side character. They weren't these weak side characters. No one was being marginalized. They were the main characters, and a bunch of cultures were represented within all these characters, if that makes sense. And so, like, it wasn't a monolithic representation of what Asian people are like. That was super powerful. I mean, the rest of the movie was amazing, but that scene stuck with me because I was just like, man, I've never seen a movie like this. And that's what representation is. I think it's important to understand the emotional connection for people of color, especially today in 2020, 2021. It's not just a buzzword or something that's like cool to talk about, or that's like some cultural thing of this year, these last 2 years, that we just, are capitalizing off, spreading awareness. It's like, no, it's real. It's deeply rooted in decades and centuries of marginalization, whether it's in entertainment or the workplace. So yeah, that stuck out to me a ton. If you haven't seen Crazy Rich Asians, man, go see that. Amazing movie. Constance Wu's the main character, one of the main characters. She's an amazing actress. She's also the mom. I mean, I'm going to go off in a tailspin, but the mom in Fresh Off the Boat, which is another really, really funny show. And she's kind of blown up since she's been in a couple other things, but yeah, go see that movie.
Yeah. And like you said, I love how it's like, nobody's a stereotype in that movie. Like, okay, they're the little sidekick, like you said, which, speaking of like stereotypes, there's this really great article in Magazine, Oprah Winfrey magazine. And, there's a guy in there, his name is Chris Buck, and he did a photo shoot, and it's called Let's Talk About Race. And it confronts racial stereotypes. And it was really cool because, like, when I first saw it, I was like, I saw it. But if you know what I'm talking about, just Google kind of Let's Talk About Race and maybe Magazine, and you'll see these pictures. And in these photo shoots, they have like a little white girl standing in front of a rack of toys that are all black dolls. Mm-hmm. And she's just sitting there and looking up at them. And then like another photo, there's all these Asian women that are sitting in chairs getting their nails done by all white women. And then another picture was, I believe it was a Hispanic woman. She looked really nice. She was all dressed up. And then there was a white maid kind of right beside her.
Wow.
And so when I saw those pictures the first times, I especially the little girl and all the black dolls, because I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, whoa, but I immediately caught myself and I was like, why am I shocked, or why am I like bothered by this photo? Cause like,
yeah,
it's just because like I've never seen that before. It's usually, I mean, obviously, the role reversal, where it was like, it's usually a whole bunch of white dolls in every store I've been to. But it was just cool to see, like, why am I like almost looking at that like, oh, that's not right, because that's not the way it is.
It's not normal.
It should be a whole bunch of white dolls, and that's what the stores look like. So it was just really interesting that my brain went there, where it was like, oh, that's odd. And that's wrong. And that's the problem. It's like, there's a problem there when I'm like, you automatically start to think like, oh, whoa, why are all these Asian, it's usually Asian people that are doing the manicures and pedicures, which is totally, I mean, if they choose to do that, that's fine. But it's like, it's totally wrong for you to just automatically think like, oh, an Asian person does manicures and pedicures to, white people or any other people. But yeah, so it's just kind of, it's really cool. I just check the photo shoot out, and look at it for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, so you mentioned dolls and toys and stuff. Obviously we both have young kids, so we're, used to thinking about this lately, but do you have trouble finding black dolls for your kids?
Well, yes. I mean, like, it's not like it's everywhere like there is with like white dolls, but I think a lot of having the internet and buying stuff online has definitely helped, because a lot more is available online. Now, when you go in a store, it can be challenging to be like, okay, we're gonna try to find a toy that represents a person of color. Yeah, it can be difficult to see or difficult to find. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I only ask because we've had an extremely hard time finding any Asian dolls for my little one or little ones, and so there's not many out there. So that's just something that I feel like is worth pointing out. That it is something that is, honestly, I think we have found a couple, but oftentimes we'll just end up, kind of settling for. It sounds weird, but just a person of color who looks almost Asian. But I point that out because it's not the norm, and I want that to help. Hopefully it's helpful to understand to some of our white friends listening of something that maybe is a privilege to not really ever have to think about that. And again, I didn't think about it nearly as much until I had kids of my own.
Yeah, there's a website called We Buy Black, and it just talks about like kind of products that everybody uses, and then it shows like, okay, the alternates that are Black owned products that you can buy to kind of like support people of color and their businesses and stuff, which is really cool. So it kind of gives you like an option of like, okay, if you buy this, you can also buy in this, which is the Black-owned business. But yeah.
And just to clarify, I feel like maybe we're starting to sound like we're hating on white toys or something. My kids have plenty of those, and we're not anti those at all. The thing to point out is just that they're not hard to find.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Thing. I mean, like my little girl, she has Frozen Elsa, like Elsa and Anna toys and stuff, and she loves them, and we let it, and we love that she loves them and stuff. It's just we just don't want them, because she's always going to be told throughout her life, like, I mean, it's always going to be in her face of like, all the white dolls, and and that's going to be ready and available to her anywhere. But just trying to teach her like we need to value every culture and not just subliminally like she has these subliminal messages in her mind from television, from movies, and from just people in general, that are always gonna show the importance of like, oh, this is beauty. Just showing the variety and celebrating like, hey, everybody is beautiful here. Every race is, and their cultures are beautiful, and we need to celebrate that. Yeah, because I think it's definitely important for kids, because they're just like a sponge and they soak up everything, even if they don't realize it.
Right. And I think, I mean, you mentioned soaking things up. So, I mean, this stuff can be subtle too, which is why I think it's important to unpack whether you're us or the big guns, the big corporations. So, I mean, Caitlin and I were at the Disney store in New York City this past year. And it was actually just before, no, I guess it was a year ago or so. Anyway, that doesn't matter. We're in there and we wanted to get a Mulan doll for Amelia. And so we're walking around the Disney store. And again, we have we have Elsa, we have Anna, we've got all of those go-to Disney characters of the last 5 years or so. Love them. They're great. But, I mean, guess which one we couldn't find on display for the most part? Mulan. And, it is what it is. I'm not going to read into it too much, but all I'm saying is for us to have to point that out to the worker, which we did, and ask, do you have a Mulan doll anywhere? I don't see them anywhere. It's hard not to think that that wouldn't have happened with an Elsa or an Ariel, Little Mermaid, or any of the other princesses that are white, because no one's going to not put those on display. We know those are going to have no trouble getting traffic and having people looking for them. And so, that's something that stuck out to me, even in a place like Disney that, I view as, pretty progressive and kind of leading the way as far as representation goes with, obviously you shared some stories earlier, but they have a long way to go as well in a lot of ways. But I think leads the way with different moves as far as representation goes. But yeah, even there, had to get someone to say, hey, where's the Mulan doll? And I think we found a couple and they weren't, anywhere they were barely in plain sight. Anyway, we found one. It's great. But yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, they're slowly doing stuff, but I think I think we need to address kind of like the past, and instead of just still celebrating these things like Dumbo and Peter Pan and stuff, but just addressing like, hey, that's wrong. Maybe we shouldn't call it a classic, or this isn't like, and same goes with like politics, where it's like, we're glorifying, celebrating these, like the founding fathers. And I'm really by that and have issue with it, because these founding fathers were slaves, but it's like, but they did so much for America and stuff. And yeah, it's like, okay, they did, but like they still thought like slavery was okay.
Oh man, do we need to do a Hamilton spinoff right now?
Yeah, and like finding out like, okay, there, and even in today's government, where it was like, we still have statues of Confederate soldiers in the Capitol, and they're like glorifying that with these statues, and I was like, this is crazy, that we have to talk about this or deal with this.
It is crazy. I think maybe a silver lining of 2020, now 2021, I think more people, at least in conversations I've had more recently, are understanding the gravity of some of the things you just talked about. Because I think the initial reaction to, are we just going to tear down all the monuments and ban the Confederate flag from everywhere? Which is like, well, yeah, maybe we should. But anyway, I feel like more people, I don't know if you agree with this, but more people, I think now are seeing like, oh yeah, I guess I think they're making the connection of how closely related or directly related those things are, just strict, like completely to racism. And it's not so much like, I think people are seeing the error in viewing it as like, well, we need to keep those up because it's history. It's like, well, it is history, and it's actually why we need to take them down or ban them and stop, allowing them, in schools and viewing them as something that they're not, call it what it is, and talk about what those represent.
Yeah. I mean, because like when we're talking about these things, and if you're not aware of this, or you're like, oh, I never knew that, or I never thought about that, but just being how to better, once you start looking for this stuff, you can't really unsee it. So like just making active choices to combat it, and like what you're watching and what you're listening to is really like just to start to make you think of like maybe unfollow some people, maybe follow people of color, and start listening to them, and submit to minority leadership, and whatever case that may be. But yeah, so just being aware of it, because it's hard to see this stuff if you're not looking for it. But once you are, and you realize how much is in your everyday life, that's when you can start to make changes or trying to be proactive and educating not only yourself, but if you have kids and start to show them new things and with people of color in them and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was, kind of where I wanted us to go next, but you kind of just already went there. So like with what we're talking about, representation, I want this to even turn into some practicality if possible. So like, what can people do with this knowledge that we're sharing about representation, or knowledge that anyone listening that's gaining from something else? Like, what can you do? Because I get asked that all the time. Okay, I read this book, or I hear you, but like, what can I actually do? Like, what do you think people, what do you want to tell people to do as far as advocating for representation, not tokenism, but representation?
Yeah, I think, that's a hard one to like, without asking like big asks of like, hey, maybe you, big ask would be like, hey, maybe you move into a more diverse neighborhood, or you, hey, go to a church that isn't all predominantly white, all white leadership and stuff like that, but find diversity, and then go further and be like, hey, I'm gonna start befriending people of color if I haven't already, and not just the one that's in my group, but like multiple, and start getting your friend base a little bit bigger and diverse, and just learning from friends.
Yeah, I think you touched on it, and I think we keep saying it's representation. It's got to be allied with power, and that's not just in the political government spectrum, but I think it's in your relationships, like you're saying, like making friends who are people of color, and diversifying your community and your friend group and the circles you run in. But it's got to be in a way, and people, we can tell, everyone listening can tell like what's genuine or not. It's got to be people that you're willing to let change your life, if that makes sense. Like, you don't ask somebody about how to be a better ally to you as a person of color. Like, don't ask somebody that if you don't want to do it, if that makes sense. Yeah. I have a lot of conversation where people ask me that, and then I'll give them what I think they could do, and I'm met with resistance, not all the time, but sometimes, and just expect it to be uncomfortable. But I
like what you said, where you were talking about like, you have to want to change, and not just be like, tell me what to do. I like Denzel Washington, my favorite actor. He's the goat. He said it great when it came to like, I think he was asked a question about race, and like there's a lot of tension, and it was when Obama was a president, and they were like, do you think change is going to come when along race lines and stuff? I think they're going to get better. Have they gotten better? And he was saying like, it's not going to be, and I still view it as like this, with Biden and Harris being elected and all the changes happening there. He was like, it's not legislations that's going to change people's hearts. And there's no legislations that's going to make me want to talk to you. And he was talking to a white man, and there's no legislation that's going to have you want to talk to, or make you talk to me and get personal and get deeper. It's going to be a heart change that does it. You're going to want to do it. And that's what's really going to change things when it comes to race and what you view of different races. It's the friendships. When you have conversations with your friends, because once you have friends that you actually care about and love, if they're going through something, whether that affects you, it's going to affect you because it's affecting them. But if you have no relationship with this person, it's going to be like watching the news, where it's like, oh, okay, that sucks, but I can turn it off and I'm fine. But if you're living something out with somebody that's really going through stuff, and you care about them, even if you have no connection to what they're going through, you still care about that person. You want to help them out. And that's why it's like great to have people of different races in your friends group. So you can start to learn and start to really care, because it's one thing to like read a book and be like book smart and stuff. But once you get that relational aspect to the things that you're actually learning and hearing, then it starts to become more important. You want to help out a lot more.
Yeah, it makes me think of, I mean, we've all seen them at this point, but a lot of the social media posts about how frustrating it can be, I think, for people of color. I say especially for, I think the Black community as of lately people being surprised when something happens. And to me, I think timing matters. And I feel like having, like you're talking about, relationships that are built on these kind of conversations and, that have a strong foundation, that foundation has got to be there and is able to be there when something comes up so that there's not surprise. I think that surprise, quote unquote, that a lot of people of color keep talking about, you got the people talking about how many more and do you believe us now? All these like different kind of catchphrases or slogans when stuff keeps happening. I know a lot of people are ironically hear that and it kind of goes in one ear out the other, ironically again, because they're like, well, okay, this just makes me feel bad, hearing this, but no, it's a call to, I think, relationships that are built on this kind of stuff where you're eventually the dream, I think, is that for a lot of us we're not in situations where everyone around me is going to be surprised when this stuff happens or have a reaction of, I can't believe that happened, or even having a check-in. I know when a lot of times I don't really want to hear from people, if that makes sense. I know a lot of times people mean well and good, but times when I'm hurting a lot, I just want to hear from people that have been living life with me. I don't want to hear check-ins that are rooted in a stereotype.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So we said last episode 1, we wanted to try and end with, and I feel like we've already done this throughout the whole episode, but wanted to try and end with some recommendations for people to take away. You got anything for us, Zach?
Yeah, I know we talked about a lot of like kid stuff, and I mean, definitely during the pandemic, kids are home a lot, and they're going to be on a lot of screens. I know we try to limit our kids to how much screens they get, but I just want to kind of list some things that have like people of color as characters and stuff that they can check out instead of if you don't know where to look. But there's some movies that are like, have you seen that new movie Over the Moon on Netflix?
No, I keep seeing it advertised.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it.
It's really cool. It's like an Asian cast, and it's really, my kids love it. And it's like,
right.
Celebrates the cultures and it's really well done. But like we
it's
also
Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then like Abominable, we watched that too.
Yeah,
I think that's on Hulu. And then Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, of course. Black Panther, Molly of Denali, which is a really cool PBS show that just came out, and Doc McStuffins and Mulan, Black Panther. But yeah, and then also for adults, if you like learning about like the history of kind of like African American civil rights era, there's a great YouTube channel that's called Voices of the Civil Rights, and they're just little snippets, little like either 3 to 10 minute long videos talking about topics of the civil rights and all that's happened. I love listening to them because it's like a lot of the stuff like you don't learn in school, or you don't hear about the stories of these people and what they've gone through. So yeah, Voices of the Civil Rights on YouTube is a really good one.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that list. That's great. I got to check out some of those things. Yeah, I've been wanting to check out Over the Moon. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, but haven't. I think forgot about it. I think I probably stopped seeing the advertisement for it, but I've definitely gotta get on that for sure. Man, I'm gonna go easy and super mainstream. It wasn't always mainstream, but obviously now it is. But if you haven't watched Hamilton, you just got to watch it. Yeah, you just got to. And after that, or maybe before, just let yourself go on a journey through YouTube and just watch the interviews. Follow any of the cast members, and you just go off on a rabbit trail of interviews and articles and stuff. I mean, you'll learn so much. Much of what we're talking about is so much what the story is of the show.
Hamilton's
I'm
great.
obsessed. Yeah, I mean, me and Caitlin got me into it. She'd want me to give her credit, but have been OG fans since 2015. Yeah.
Fun fact, my sister-in-law,
I was just going to do that. You go for it.
her artwork of Kamala Harris and Michelle Obama and
Joe Biden.
yeah, Joe Biden's wife. What's her name again?
Yeah. Dr. Jill Biden.
Jill Biden. Yeah. She just did artwork of them, and it referenced Hamilton, and Hamilton reposted it on their Instagram, which is baller.
She blew up.
And now
I mean, I don't even know how many likes it ended up with, but man, it was.
And then she started selling the artwork, which is really cool. I think it was she's already it's cool.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, shout out to Becca Reppert.
Yeah.
Becca Boo on Instagram, I think. Yeah. Man, that graphic is amazing.
Just go to the Hamilton page. You'll see it there. And give it a like.
The Skylar sister drawing of Michelle Obama, Kamala Harris, and Joe Biden.
Joe Biden, yeah.
Man, yeah. So cool. All right. You got anything else, Zach?
I think that's it for now. Yeah.
This has been awesome. Thanks for coming back and doing a second episode already. Again, Zach's going to keep coming back. So those of you that have enjoyed listening to him, which I know you guys have, he'll keep coming back. But man, thanks for potting with me, man. This has been awesome. And thanks for listening, everyone. See you guys next time. This podcast is created to be a place for people of color and our allies to safely have the conversations we're usually only having behind the scenes, and to invite anyone else to listen in, learn, and grow with us. This episode was written by me and Zach. Our artwork is created by Ashley Bush, and our music was written and produced by Dylan Dent.